reading can help to reduce stress, and it can help to build empathy and understanding. It's a way of walking around in somebody else's shoes. If you're reading a novel about something or a book of somebody's memoirs and their lived experience, it helps you to understand what other people's lives can be like, and it helps us to understand what it might be like to live with some sort of a medical condition. But it also helps develop your own self-awareness and this feeling that you're not the only one, that other people feel the same or have been through similar experiences. It helps to keep the brain active and engaged, of course. So as long as we're engaging the brain in reading, and something happens in the brain when we read, and it engages parts of the brain that no other activity does. And therefore it has a very significant and positive therapeutic effect. I don't know the science any more than that, but I am what I've understood about it demonstrates that it has a very specific therapeutic effect within the brain. And it can also help to reduce the symptoms of depression and dementia. A lot of the research that's gone into the impact of reading shows that it does have a positive effect on both those particular conditions. Diolch, Fion. So how can reading help around mental health in its broadest sense, health and well-being? It can help you to manage your own health through reading reliable health information and advice. And this is really, really key to this scheme. If you Google dementia, for example, or anxiety or depression, you're going to get a whole host of information. How are you to know that that information is reliable, based on evidence, based on medical good practice, and approved, if you like, by experts? Well, you can't. There's no way of knowing. What this scheme offers you is access to information and reading that has gone through a very rigorous selection process. And it's a scheme that's endorsed by a lot of the main medical organisations, all the sort of schools and colleges of medicine and well-being approve this scheme and endorse it. It can also offer a means of self-help through a book-based therapy. So the books which are therapeutic in the way they've been written have been written by professional therapists. So if you like, it's a distillation of their expertise into a book form, which makes it more accessible than, for example, accessing face-to-face therapeutic counselling or whatever. It's much easier to get hold of a book than it is to get an appointment with a psychologist or a psychiatrist, for example, particularly at the moment, obviously, when support services are so stretched. Reading can also help boost your mood and just make you feel better. And as I said earlier, it lets you explore other people's life experiences without actually having to go through it yourself. And that's done through the lens of fiction or memoir, giving you maybe a different perspective on life or on living with a condition. And this is something that reading can do that no other form does, because you're creating your own response to the reading in your own imagination. Watching a film or a television program, you're watching somebody else's version of that reality. Through reading, you're creating your own, and that's why it can be so powerful. And reading can also be a means of the social aspect of reading. Now, this is the one thing that in this last year we've all had to struggle with, because traditional meetings of reading groups and support groups obviously haven't been able to happen. However, like today, we've been able to take a lot of that activity online. But I know from talking to some of our library users that the thing they're missing most is this opportunity to get together with others. And one day, hopefully, we will be back to that situation. Diolch, Fion. So I'd like to tell you about the Reading Well Books on Prescription scheme. Books on Prescription describes the sort of scheme it is, and you may have already heard about this concept of being prescribed a book for a specific condition. So I'd like to explain a little bit more about how the scheme works. Thank you, Fion. So it's each of the schemes, and I'll explain which ones there are in a moment, but each of one is a list of books which have been specially chosen by experts in the field and also people with lived experience themselves or as family or carers. And all these books are available free of charge through local libraries. And it's a way of understanding and managing your own health and well-being through helpful reading. So that's the definition of what the Reading Well Books on Prescription scheme actually is. Thank you, Fionn. So how does it work? There are two ways you can access it. You could be prescribed a book, and the same way you could be prescribed medicine or some sort of other form of therapy. So it could be prescribed maybe by a GP or a social care worker or a support worker from a third sector agency. And you would then visit your local library with your prescription and borrow that book free of charge. And books can be prescribed before diagnosis, post-diagnosis, or could be prescribed in order to support family and carers to better understanding what their loved one is going through. Thank you, Fionn. But you can also self-refer or self-prescribe. So in the olden days, the old books on prescriptions, was very much you could only get it if you had your piece of paper from your GP. We've completely changed that, and we've changed the access to it. So you can now order your own books. At the moment, library doors are closed at the very moment, but hopefully we'll be reopening again soon. But the service is still out there. And we all offer an order and collect type of service. So you can phone your local library or go online and order these books. Or if you're not sure exactly which one you want, you can explain to the staff what you're looking for, and they could find and choose the books for you. So you can self-refer and borrow the books. So you need to be a library member, because it doesn't cost anything to join your local library. Anybody can do so. And at the moment, you can also join online. I hear somebody laughing there at the Ruby Wax Frazzled book, possibly, yes. A very, very popular book on this book list, I can tell you. Thank you, Fionn. So the scheme is fully bilingual, so all the materials in Wales are fully bilingual, and the Welsh Government, I'll mention BorrowBox in a moment, Fern, thank you for your question, it's coming up. The scheme is fully bilingual in Wales. We had funding from Welsh Government over the last few years to make this scheme fully bilingual, and the vast majority of the books are also available in Welsh as well. And for the first time, we've now got a whole body of books in Welsh dealing with mental health, dementia, and emotional well-being. So it's a real step forward and it's one of the biggest translation programmes that's happened. We also have a lot of original Welsh language material, which, as these lists are updated over the years, they will probably be included. At the moment, the books are in translation. So as I say, you can also order your books online or over the phone from your local library. Diolch, Fionn. So there are currently 3 different Reading Well books on prescription schemes in Wales. If anybody's here from England, there are a couple of others which we haven't yet got as fully bilingual schemes in Wales, but these are the 3 main ones we currently have. We started on the left there with the books on prescription for dementia. That was launched almost 3 years ago. That's a completely bilingual list, so all the books there are available in Welsh as well. And they're aimed at people living with dementia, diagnosed or not, for their family, their carers, but also anybody in the general population who just wants to understand and learn a bit more about what it's like to live with dementia or to look after somebody. And I certainly know of a lot of people who feel they've learned a lot about dementia and its consequences just through reading some of these books. The other scheme that we're doing a lot of work promoting at the moment is the General Mental Health Scheme, and over half of the books on this scheme are also available in Welsh, and there's a real range, and I'll show you some of the titles in a moment. So that deals with a whole host of different forms of mental health issues, from dealing with grief, depression, anxiety, stress, as well as some cognitive behaviour type therapy self-help books as well. And then I was delighted that back in October this last year, we were able to launch a scheme for children. And I think we all recognise that children's mental health and emotional well-being has really taken a knock in this year with their isolation and separation from friends and from school. So this particular scheme is aimed at children in the sort of 7 to 11 age group, but some of the books on the list are obviously available and of use to children a bit younger and a bit older as well. And the idea is that they share the books with the adults in their lives as a starting point for conversations. Diolch, Fionn. So the books on dementia, there are 24 books in the dementia list, and they range from information and advice on how to live well with dementia, ideas for carers, be they professional carers or family carers, and also personal stories and anecdotal memoirs about the experience of either living with dementia yourself or being a carer for somebody. And this list was co-created with the Alzheimer's Society, and it is actually an official part of the Dementia Action Plan for Wales. Thank you, Fiona. And here's just a selection of some of the titles to show you some of the range of the different types of books. One of the books is specially written for people with learning difficulties to explain what dementia is in very pared down version of the information. There are some really good that you can see on probably in that top line, first steps to living with dementia. Again, one of the books that we recommend to people who want to learn the very basics about dementia. Over on the right, you can see some picture book type formats. There's one there called Grandma, which is a book for young children to explain what Grandma's going through now that she's been diagnosed with dementia. And on the far right, an example of a lovely series of books called Pictures to Share, which are designed for people with dementia, but we're actually finding that a lot of other people are finding these books particularly useful. And they are picture books for adults, specifically for adults, so they're not children's books, and they are very visual, lots of illustration, minimum text. And this particular one is a bilingual book, and it's all about life in Wales and all the things that make Wales unique. It's called Hen Radfan Hadau, but there's a whole series of titles here on different themes, like memories of seasides, of holidays, of shopping, of family life, of there's a lovely one of poetry and creative writing. So if you don't know the Pictures to Share series, then please do look out for those. Question here from Valerie. Resources in easy read? No, not that I'm aware, I'm afraid, Valerie. That the publishers of these books haven't made them available in official easy read versions. But what I would say is that there's quite a wide range of reading skill levels within the collection. But it's certainly something we've already identified this as possibly room for improvement for the future, and that is certainly something that should be considered to widen the range and therefore the accessibility. Diolch, Fion. So a very similar slide, but just showing you some of the Welsh language titles, and you can see most of them have the same cover design as the original English titles as well. Diolch, Fion. So the mental health list, this is a list of 37 books. It's a longer list because obviously it's covering a far wider range of conditions and medical problems. So it covers different sorts of therapies, some specific ones. I've got a copy of the booklet here. I'll just tell you some of the themes it covers. It covers mindfulness. It covers low self-esteem, social anxiety, sleep problems. I think we saw the sleep book earlier on, stress, bereavement and loss, dealing with anger. Then there are some therapy self-help books around anxiety, depression, obsession and compulsion, and general well-being. And then it also covers some titles on postnatal depression, mood swings, bulimia and binge eating, and then some personal stories of well-being, dealing with bereavement, dealing with depression, social anxiety, and being a carer as well. So just some of the titles for you here. The two at the left and the right hand extremes of this illustration are examples of a title. They go together, one for somebody living with depression, the other for people living with somebody who is living with depression. And they are graphic novels, so they are comic books, they are comic format illustrated books, so again a different form of access, and we know that these are very popular with people who maybe have lower levels of literacy, or maybe there's a language barrier, because obviously the information is conveyed in a more graphic, is illustrated format. You'll see some of those, the books there with the coloured circles on them. Those are examples of some of the very short introductions, and what we're finding looking at the data about which books are being borrowed, these are the really popular books. So very, very short, easy read introductions to different conditions. And we're finding that these are the most popular books in the series. We saw the Ruby Wax book earlier. The one called Recovery Letters is very, very popular with people who are living with depression. It's one man's story of how he was in the depths of depression and in a really difficult place, was writing letters to himself throughout his recovery, and he uses some of those letters now to go back and revisit when he feels he's maybe slipping back a little bit. So he's finding that was a very therapeutic form of creativity for him. So these letters are now available for us all to read. Diolch Ffion. And then finally, as I said, we launched the children's list in October, and we're just doing the rollout. Obviously, it's challenging at the moment to reach schools and teachers and parents, but we're working on it as a sector. And this deals with helping children to understand the world around them and how to understand their own emotions. And the books are intended to start conversations with the adults in their lives about how they're feeling. So it deals with everything from bullying and loneliness to dealing with situations, maybe a bereavement in the family. There's also one book that actually helps children deal with events in the news. And you can imagine at the moment with everything that's going on, that processing that for children can be quite challenging. So we're delighted that this scheme has been launched this year. Diolch Ffion. So somebody asked earlier on about BorrowBox, then yes. Now, if you don't already know about BorrowBox, this is the offer from Welsh libraries for downloading ebooks and e-audio books, completely free from every public library service in Wales. And it's got thousands of books on it, absolutely thousands. And it's a shared service, so we share this across the whole of Wales, and we all contribute and pay for the content, and then it's made available to all library members across Wales. And some of the books on the Reading Well list are available through BorrowBox. Now, not all, because they're not all available in other formats by the publishers, and we can only purchase and provide if the publishers make them available in other formats, and we're constantly on at the publishers to make them more widely available, and it is a growing provision. But several of the titles are available as ebooks if you have an ebook reader, or if you use a tablet or a phone to read an ebook, or if you prefer to listen to a book. And for some people who maybe print is challenging for them, find that an e-audio book is much more accessible, and so you can download them through BorrowBox if you're not already using it. Victoria's saying that you use it, and it's incredible. Yes, thank you, that's really good to know. The use of BorrowBox since lockdown in March has been phenomenal. It's grown hugely, and we've, as an individual library service, invested a lot more money into it, but also the Welsh Government have been very, very supportive and have enabled us to buy an awful lot more content. So there's a huge range of books available on there. If you don't already use it, just go along on your device, on your phone, on your tablet, to wherever you normally download your apps from, and you'll find the BorrowBox app, download it, sign in with your library card, and then you create your account, and then you can borrow up to 10 ebooks, 10 audiobooks at any one time. You can renew them if nobody else wants them, and you can place requests. So it works very similarly to physical books, but it is a fabulous service. So if you haven't yet discovered BorrowBox, whether it's for reading well or not, you might just want it to access your favourite fiction or non-fiction. I'd highly recommend having a look at BorrowBox. Diolch Ffion. So you might wonder why libraries, why are we in this field of providing support for mental health and things? Well, there are lots of reasons, really. The library service, you may need your current library card to access BorrowBox. Yes, you will. You will need to be a library member to access BorrowBox. If you're not already a member, just phone your local library, or you can join online from most library services as well. So your local library, why libraries? Well, we're there for everybody. It's an environment that is welcoming and is there to help. That's what we're interested in. We're not interested in your money. We're not going to make you pay for anything that when you come in. We want to help you and to support you. And I think we have a very important role to play in the next few months and years in helping our community to rebuild and to come back together again. And we're hoping that we can prove that libraries could be a really key contributor to that, because we are local. There is hopefully a local library within relatively easy reach of most people, be that a physical library or a mobile library. We're also now, and increasingly so, a virtual library, and certainly that's the big sea change we've seen during the pandemic, is how we've developed our virtual offers, but also the uptake that there has been from people. We're free. I keep having to say this because there are still people who think that you have to pay to use your library or pay to join. No, you don't. And at the moment, no libraries are charging overdue fines either. And there's potential that a lot of authorities will actually not go back to charging fines. It's something that we're all in negotiation with our budget holders at the moment. So we feel it's one of the barriers, and we'd like to get rid of it. In the case of all the Reading Well books, there are no fines, and this is a really important message. We appreciate that even if we do end up having to charge overdue fines, then there will not be any on Reading Well books, because we understand that the people who use them, maybe their life is a little bit chaotic, and remembering to return your book on time might be one ask too many. So there are no fines, and also you can borrow them for a longer period of time than the normal 3-week lending period. They're available for at least 3 months and can be renewed as well. So again, we've tried to remove any potential barriers to them being used. And the other unique thing I think about local libraries is that they are a non-medical, non-stigmatized location. So for some people, it might be maybe a bit of a challenge to approach maybe a medical setting for help and support as that first step. Whereas you could be walking into your local library for a host of different reasons, and nobody really knows why you're walking in. And therefore it can be, you know, the first point of choice for a lot of people in their local community to find information and help and support. And certainly here in Denbighshire, pre-lockdown, we were the venue for a lot of other services to deliver their services to their communities. So a lot of support agencies in the third sector, Age Connect, our local autism support service, CAB. We also have something called Talking Points, which is where you can access community support services, so social services support. So our libraries were being used as the place where those services were delivered in local towns and villages. So there's something probably quite similar in most libraries across Wales. So lots of reasons why the local library is a natural fit. But another key reason is the reach that we have. The network of public libraries across Wales reaches thousands of people on a regular basis, and no other organisation has that sort of reach within local communities. So that was another reason that the people who set up the whole Reading Well concept turned to libraries as the key partner for delivery. Diolch Fion. So just to give you just a few stats, these are a little bit dated because these are pre-pandemic stats, but in the years since the first Reading Well scheme was established in 2013, across these are UK figures, well over 1 million people, probably far more than that by now, have borrowed at the time 2.3 million Reading Well books from public libraries in Wales and England. I think those figures are probably much higher by now. And of those people, almost all said that they found the books helpful and useful to them. Diolch Fion. So I'm going to end with a couple of quotes so that you can hear somebody else's opinion. We've pulled these 2 quotes from people local to us who gave us some feedback on the books that they'd been using. And one said that as soon as I started reading, I felt as if the author knew exactly how I was feeling. So this thing about you're not alone, other people have gone through similar experiences, and for many people that's the first step to recognizing maybe that they've got a problem, or the first step on recovery is realizing that you're not alone. And this message comes through very, very often from the people who are accessing these books. Thanks Fion. And there's one other quote: that self-help reading gives you back control over your own life. So this idea of being more empowered and a bit of self-control over living with whatever condition you are living with, and that it's really, again, part of your recovery or learning to live with the condition is feeling an element of control, and that the books that people had read had helped them in this way. Diolch Fion. I think the final slide is just to say where next. Well, obviously, contact your local library service. download the BorrowBox app if you haven't already done so. If you're interested in knowing a bit more about the evidence and the research and the impact study that's behind all of this, I haven't gone into too much of that today, but it is all available on that website. Or if you just Google Reading Well Wales, you will find the website. It's available in Welsh as well. That gives you access to digital copies of the book lists, and they're actually interactive PDFs, so you can actually tick the books that you want and then print off the list and take it along to the library with you, and lots of other publicity material as well if you're interested in helping us to spread the word about the scheme. If you want to keep up to date with developments, then you can sign up to a mailing list from the Reading Agency. The Reading Agency, I should have said at the beginning, are a charity set up to support public libraries in our work, and they help us run a lot of schemes, and this is one of the key schemes that they help us to run. So they actually operate the system or the schemes on a day-to-day basis, and we do the direct delivery to customers. And if none of those work for you, then there's my email, and you're very, very welcome to contact me, particularly if maybe you want a local contact in your local authority, if you want to follow this through and find out a bit more about the situation in your local area. So I'll say diolch yn fawr. I'll stop speaking there, ask Ffion maybe to stop sharing the screen, and then I'll pop my camera back on. I might have to just keep popping it off if the connection goes. So thank you very much for listening, and I'm very happy to take any questions, comments or feedback from you. Diolch.
Thank you, Bethan. Anybody have any questions you'd like to ask? No?
Yes, please. I just didn't quite get, where would I get the list, particularly for the one, the mental health list, book list?
Okay, I think the best, yes, it's available online. So if you Google Reading Well Wales, you'll find it. But what I'll do, I'll send a link to Ffion to send out on email to everybody, and that'll take you directly to the PDF list, but also to the general website as well.
Oh, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bethan. Any more questions? No? Oh, I forgot to ask at the beginning if everybody was all right with me recording this session. Is that okay with everyone?
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, thank you, because otherwise I sort of started to record it a little bit in, and if anybody objects, then I wouldn't share it. But are you all okay with that then?
Yeah.
Thank you. I always forget that. Well, if nobody...
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
This BorrowBox, which is completely new to me, sounds absolutely brilliant. We're in England as opposed to Wales. Does it still apply in England? Do we still need a library card in England? How do I go about it? Not for myself, but for my lovely husband.
Hello. Yes, Valerie.
But bearing in mind that I'm the one that needs to control the technology, it's somebody with him in order to actually.
Yes, I'm going to take my camera off because I know I'll have problems, but I'll reply to you in voice. Yes, BorrowBox is available, but there are other offers as well. I know that there's something called Overdrive, which offers downloadable resources in England. So the best thing I suggest is you speak to your local library. I think that's the best thing, because I'm not certain in which, depending on which local authority you live in. So I suggest get in touch with your local library. In Leeds, yeah. Right. I'm not sure what Kirklees offer, but BorrowBox is available in England, but they do have other offers as well. So I'd suggest that you give your local library a ring or have a look up online. It'll work in a similar way. There are more than one platform out there for downloadable resources. It's just that I know in Wales, BorrowBox is available in all our local authorities.
Yeah. Oh, it sounds brilliant. Never heard of it in 8 years of dealing with brain injury.
Yeah.
Yes, I think the use of downloadable ebooks and e-audio, it's really in the last sort of 3 years that it's really taken off. and it's now part of the core offer across most public libraries in the UK now.
Okay, thank you very, very much for that help.
Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
I've written down several books, names and titles. Yes, I can go on Amazon, but it costs money.
Exactly. That's why your public library is there for you. And if you're not sure what you want, then please speak to the staff in your local library. And I know by reputation, Kirklees is an excellent library service. So please make contact with them and explain what you're looking for.
You.
And I'm sure they'll identify some books for you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, if nobody has any more questions, then I'd like to really thank you, Bethan, for a very interesting talk, and it's been really useful.